Welcome, Color of Success podcast family. I'm your host, Dr. Stephanie J. Wong. Check out my memoir, Cancel the Filter, Realities of a Psychologist, Podcaster, and Working Mother of Color, where I share my experiences in the realm of mental health, both professionally and personally. Color of Success podcast is streaming on all your favorite platforms and socials. Whether you're on the go or comfy on the sofa, you can tune in at your own comfort. As you know, we love growing discussions with our guests from our AAPI and ethnic minority communities. With so many friends and experts from different aspects of life, we love learning their stories and understanding what their success means to them. Let's get into it. Super producer Bandit is a two-time Billboard charting producer and Grammy-nominated engineer known for his exceptional work with some of the biggest names in the music industry. Born in Queens, New York, and currently residing in Los Angeles, California, with his wife and son, he is a first-generation Korean American who has left a significant mark on the music scene. Bandit was nominated as an engineer/mixer at the 2014 Grammys in the category of Album of the Year for Beyoncé's self-titled album, Beyoncé. In 2022, he reached number 2 on the Billboard Rap Albums chart with Tory Lanez. His impressive portfolio includes collaborations with Beyoncé, Jay-Z, DJ Khaled, and many more. Well, today I'm so excited to have super producer Bandit on the show today, and I get to do this old school thing like boom, 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 boom. Welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Wong. I really appreciate you having me. Been a fan of the pod for some time, and I'm glad to do an episode with you today.
I'm super excited. Our social person was like, oh my God, you have such a sick guest coming up. And so I'm really excited to kind of delve deeper into your mental health journey and all the things in the industry. Walk me through your mental health journey, first of all, because you mentioned to me off camera that it all started actually when you were young.
Yeah, so I'd say roughly right when I was in my childhood, around the age of 6 or 7, that I discovered that I had panic disorder. And for the listeners that aren't too familiar, it's those people that have anxiety attacks at unexpected times. For me particularly, though, it happened in the middle of the night when I'd wake up from sleeping and wake up into an anxiety attack. So it would, I guess they call those night terrors from a lot of people's point of view. So I started having those roughly around 6 years old, and I didn't know what it was at the time. And I don't think, a lot of people in the Asian community are very aware on a lot of mental health issues. So I don't think my parents really knew at the time. So we went to go assess it, but I don't think the psychiatrist really kind of grasped it, just because I didn't have the terminology or the words or the language to be able to describe accurately what I was going through at that time. But it was only about later on that I kind of understood what that term anxiety meant from that age, and understanding what a panic and anxiety attack was. So I started having those from when I was about 6 years old up until the point that right around when I graduated college, I would say. So
Oh, wow.
A decent portion of my life, but I've been pretty much anxiety attack free since 21, 22 years old. So it's been quite some time. So
Amazing.
it's been about 15 years, I would say, that I've had an anxiety attack, but it was definitely a big part of my childhood.
So, even hearing that, first off, that breaks my heart that you had to go through that. What did you experience when you were going through that? Was it sweating, pounding heart, feeling like you couldn't breathe?
At that time, I thought it was for a lot of us who do have anxiety attacks, it almost feels like a heart attack or something. You're not even sure what's kind of going on. You have a lot of trouble breathing. There's a lot of tightness in your chest. And in the way that I was having it and the way I was describing it at that time, I would be waking up into it right in the middle of the night, right? So it almost felt like I was half awake and half asleep while it was happening. So it was kind of like a scary in-between feeling for me. And for me, strangely enough, it was the same dream that I would be having every time that I would have these night terrors. And just to kind of briefly describe what that dream was like. So in that dream that I've had from 6 years old until I was an adult, pretty much, I was kind of in this blank white open space, and it's just this kind of abstract dream where there's a red brick wall kind of in between me, and all my family and friends were on the other side of the wall. And then I'm kind of jumping on the other side on a trampoline, just trying to hop over the wall to get to where my parents and where my family and my friends were. And I'd always try to be like jumping a little higher, and I'd be getting a little more anxious, realizing that I wouldn't be able to reach the top of it and get over to the other side. And usually, when that anxiety crept up to a certain level, that's when I would kind of get into this anxiety attack, and I would wake up into that kind of state. So that was a recurring dream that happened almost every time that I had an anxiety attack and night terror throughout my childhood.
That's an interesting parallel because when I saw that on your form that you filled out for some pre-pod information, and now that I'm hearing it, it's there's so many parallels there, right? It's like you felt different, first of all, than your family and friends, and you couldn't really, like you said, have the verbal abilities at the time to really explain that. And so it's like you were grasping for support, but not knowing how to do that. And let's go into the career part of like, you've gone into an industry that is, I would have to say, non-stereotypically Asian, meaning
Right.
not many people are just like, I want to be in the music industry. They might be, but in terms of actually taking that step and fighting some cultural expectations or beliefs about what's stable in life, how did that dream relate to your career decision?
I would say that my interests were certainly different, just kind of like how you're saying, this is a non-stereotypical Asian career path. And I come from a academically rigorous family. My sister is a anesthesiologist. She's married to a plastic surgeon. All my cousins
That's
went to some
amazing.
sort of some Ivy, and they kind of moved on to one of those typical, one of those five Asian career paths that a lot of our parents give us, which is like law, medicine, some form of accounting, whether that's the CPA or corporate accounting. And I didn't necessarily have any interest in those kind of things. My sister was kind of like the type that she knew she wanted to be a doctor since she was like 5 years old. She was kind of her favorite TV character was Doogie Howser, so she just knew it from the jump what she wanted to be. And I was trying to choose something along those lines from those options that I was provided by my parents, but I felt like even though I'd be trying my best at those things, I just wasn't excelling at those things as well as some of my peers or maybe some of my family members. But I didn't realize, and I knew music was a huge part of my life. I played instruments all my life. I played
What do you play?
guitar,
Guitar?
keys.
Cool.
I used to rap a little bit in high school. I wasn't very any good at it, of course, but and then I came across producing in college. I ended up seeing a friend of mine who kind of bought some gear during one college break, and he kind of showed me what he was doing. And I ended up finding a course at a state school called Binghamton that I went to at that time, and they offered a course in music production, and then I took that. And then after that, I TA for that course and took some of the more advanced courses. And that's kind of how I came across that career path. But along that way from my childhood, it was more of like a passion of mine. I just never knew that it would become my career. But I would say that as far as that dream and how that drove that, I realized that a lot of my dream was tied to me trying to adapt to being something I wasn't, which was, I wasn't going to be my sister. I wasn't going to be some of my friends who were kind of interested in those career paths. And I think I was limiting my ceiling and limiting being able to see myself for what I really was by trying to mold myself into something that didn't really interest me at all. And I think a lot of that anxiety came from that is, could I ever measure up by being something else? So that
Yeah.
was something I thought about.
I was going to say that that has an impact on self-esteem when you feel like you're not fitting into these boxes. And I totally can relate because I never thought I would be doing stuff in media or anything like that, like when I was
Right.
getting my doctorate, right? And so there are these aspects, though, it's becoming a little bit more accepted in our communities. But how did your family respond when you broke the news, I would say, hey, I'm not
Yeah.
going to be doing this. I actually found something I really like.
Right. So I think I was 21, and thank God for my sister. She loves me a lot. She's 4 years older than me, so she's like the big sister, right? And I guess I was trying to study for to go into like some sort of master's program for like accounting at that time, just as kind of that's the box that my parents wanted to go in. They're like, you're not really sure what you want to do, and maybe you should go into something that's safe like that, right? So, but she obviously knew that wasn't me, so she called them at one point when I was in college, and she was like, "Why don't you just let Jonathan kind of do what he wants, Bandit?" And well, I wasn't. They don't call me Bandit at home, but Jonathan
That
do what
would
he
be
wants.
so fun though. Like just for a day, can you just call me that? Yeah.
Yep. And so my mom called me and she was like, "What is it that you want to do?" And I told her music, and she said, "Oh, absolutely not." And then so for the following year after that kind of discussion, they finally came around, but it took some time for them to say yes. And it was more like, you're young and this is the only time in your life when you can take a little bit of risk. So to give my parents credit, they come from a lot of the backgrounds that a lot of our families come from. They immigrated from South Korea, and there are only a certain amount of career paths that were available to them when they were coming up.
Which is still the
So,
case in Korea. So I just got back from Korea. I didn't know you're Korean, so I don't know if you
yep,
speak, but it's still similar over there. It's like if people covet the Samsung jobs, all the
yep,
big corporate Lotte. So it's like even coming to America when there's that immigrant status, there's still even in Korea there are like restricted options as well as to what's considered prestigious or whatever. So that must have been
absolutely.
really tough to kind of have that conversation.
Yeah, it's a super tough conversation. I do give my parents a little bit of credit. Them eventually coming around means they're a little more open-minded than some of even my peers' parents. So a lot of my friends and their families, probably wouldn't even consider it even after a year. So I do give my parents credit for allowing me to kind of do that with a peace of mind, knowing that they're okay with that. And so the first thing I did after graduating college with a econ degree, which I've never leveraged in my entire life, even in my post college career, I went to a certification program for like audio technology. I realized, oh man, I'm not gonna spend 4 years again going doing a BA, let's say out of Berkeley. And the music industry, it doesn't matter as much, like the college degree, especially if you're like on the composition side or producing side or engineering side. So I went there for 9 months, and then at the end of the program, I had the highest grades in my class at that time, and then they selected 5 students to interview for a new studio that was opening up in Manhattan at that time, and they said this is a studio. This is going to be a commercial studio opened by Alicia Keys and her team, and her longtime collaborator Ann Manseli, who was one of like the first female super engineers at that time, and I interviewed out of the 5, and they hired me out of the 5. And then I think in the interview, I said, like, yeah, I'll make myself available 7 days a week. And I
Sold.
don't think, yeah, I don't think they cared like that who was the best at engineering or producing or anything like that. They just, because in the beginning, when you're an unpaid intern, they don't really have you do any of that stuff. It's more about clean the studio up, clean the bathrooms up, go get whatever the artist wants, go travel 10 miles away to get blunts for this rapper and bring it back to the
I've
studio.
heard those stories before. I don't know if you listened to Kev Lou's story, but yeah, he's told me a few of those stories, and I'm just like, man, some of those rumors are true.
Yeah, very true. And so that's how I got my start, my footing in. It was like a 6 months of an unpaid internship, sometimes working 80 to 100 hours a week, just kind of doing. It's pretty much free labor, for the studio, but with the opportunity to eventually moving into a paid position, which was like a general assistant position, and then from there you can go into more engineering related roles at the studio, which has a lot to do with like recording the artists, mixing the music and mastering the music.
So you have an impressive resume working with Beyonce, Jay-Z, DJ Khaled, Nicki Minaj. And so who has been your favorite artist to work with and why?
So actually, right before this meeting, I always think it's like the latest artists that I've worked with, and just because they kind of inspire different parts of me. There's this girl that's doing pretty well in New York right now, and I just came out from a listening session with her into this podcast interview. Her name is Raina Simone. She's kind of built in the same. She's built from the same type of cloth as I would say like a J. Cole or like a Kendrick Lamar,
Oh,
and
wow.
she has a lot of substance to what she raps about, and she's really saying some meaningful things. So she has an album coming out, 24 tracks with 24 music videos lined up.
That is
Um,
intense.
yeah, one of the features is Ice Spice, so she's going to be doing some great things, and we're doing a full project right after this album together. So I'll be fully producing that with her, and I want everyone to look out for her. She's going to be a star.
Oh my God. Well, we broke the news first. Let me just say that right now.
Yeah.
So I loved what you said because you did a certification program versus
Mhm.
going to a four-year college. And I think, you know, that's the trend nowadays when you go into tech or anything like that. Yes, a
Mhm.
degree, they ask about it, but then it's like, do you have the skills to do this? The other part that I liked is that you actually did pay your dues. It wasn't like you just hopped in the studio with some of these superstars. You literally were in the grind all the time and having to be a yes person.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
what did you learn about yourself through all that?
I realized that because I had so little to offer the studio at that time, I only came from a cert program. Just to give you an idea, like some of my peers at that studio, my colleagues there, my coworkers that were also unpaid interns or general assistants, they came from like a Berkeley College of Music, a Full Sail University. These are like the best music programs in the country, or NYU's Clive Davis program, which is also a big one too. And I realized because I didn't come from that kind of pedigree as far as education, that all I had to offer was my availability and like the effort level that I can put into it, and my humility as far as not feeling like I should be ahead of anything because of where I came from. And I realized that a lot of my coworkers that did come from those programs were like, "Oh, I'm too good for this," or maybe I should. Why should I be cleaning bathrooms? Let John clean it, or something like that. And I feel like that level of they. It's almost like some people have a level of privilege from where they came from, and I feel like that level of humility is the reason why that I was able to kind of move ahead. A lot of the things about working in one of those in any work environment, like you would know, is that can I stand being around this person? Is this person's ego manageable?
Yep.
Along those lines, and I didn't realize that was such a huge asset that at that time, but that was probably one of the biggest reasons I was able to move ahead. I didn't think I deserved anything because of I came from a certification program, so I was willing to do all I could do was do the things that other people weren't willing to do, no matter how menial I thought it was at that time. So if I had to, if someone was like puking in the staircase, I would clean it up, or if I had to clean the bathrooms till 10 in the morning and clean the studios up after all the rappers are done, recording throughout the night. I would do it and take those night shifts, right? So that was a huge asset to me at that time, that I didn't even realize until later on.
I hope you feel super proud because as you're telling me, like, I am so proud of you for like doing those things and what you said, like the willingness to do things other people don't want to do. I think that is a standout character right there because it's not just in the music industry. We see people using interns for a number of things and
Right.
there's a level of trying to be kind to people. And there are some people that aren't so kind to interns or have that sense of
Right.
entitlement. And so that is something that is so wonderful about what
Yeah.
you described about yourself. So thinking about this generation today, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, um, what do you think people can do? And maybe it's similar to what you just talked about for yourself, but if they wanted to
Mhm.
break into the music industry.
I would say that the best way to break into this industry, even today, I guess it depends on the role. So I'll speak from the perspective of the two roles that I have held in this business. So if someone wants to become an engineer, which I was in the earlier part of my career, I would say that going the studio route is definitely the way. And the traditional route is that you start from that internship and you climb your way up, and eventually you'll get in that
Hmm.
seat where you get to work with the artists. And the dream from there is that an artist will come along that's a little bit newer, maybe just signed their first deal and doesn't have their team fully set yet. And if they like you enough, they'll pick you up and you'll be on tour with them. And that's kind of the route that most engineers travel. And for engineers, I would say don't go to a big studio like I did. I would say go to a middle-sized studio. They'll let you get in that seat a little bit quicker.
Mm.
I got a little bit lucky because that studio I went to, God bless me in certain ways that it just opened up at the time, and I joined in this first year that it opened up. So there weren't too many people ahead of me for me to kind of wait for them to either leave to a new opportunity or quit eventually. So, but I know in studio, other big studios that sometimes people wait 2, 3 years just to even get in that seat. And it can be a really long time.
Mhm.
But for producers, I would say there's so many different options right now. There's producers that make their own melodies and they send it out to bigger producers to use it for artists. There's ways to email or DM and network via Instagram or other social media tools, which are great. But generally, the way that I made it as a producer, by the grace of God, I met my manager, Trilt, who's been managing me for 4 years. And to have someone like that who really believes in you is crucial. Someone that could really get you in the rooms, get you with the artists, get you with the A&Rs at the labels or the managers. And so I wouldn't go into the employment route at a particular organization like a label or a studio. If you want to be a producer, I would say just try to find your way to artists somehow, whether through its networking events and trying to link with them via social media applications, which we constantly do all the time, even today.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing what social media can do. There's the, difficulties that it brings, and then there's also connections that you can really make. So,
Right. Absolutely.
what artist would you want to collaborate with at this point? Putting it out into the universe.
Yeah. I would say my biggest inspiration was Kanye West. He's pretty much like the main reason I started producing to begin with. He was just so, I think when he came out with College Drop, I was 14 years old, and it just blew my mind just because the state of rap at that time was gangster rap. And
Hmm.
so this backpack rap wasn't really like a huge thing until Kanye kind of took it to that level. And I guess I kind of related to that in my own way, just feeling very different. I'm not a gangster by any means or from the streets or anything like that. So I kind of have a different perspective to how I create my music as well. That's a little bit closer to what inspired me. I love what Kanye did in the beginning, and a lot of what I do today is still very soulful like that.
Hmm.
So I would say Kanye West is probably my biggest inspiration, someone I would want to work with at some point.
Well, we can't be friends if you don't bring me along when BTS comes to you. I just got to put
Yeah,
that out there.
absolutely. You'll be the first I call.
Oh, oh God, my bestie now. So to think a little bit about mental health now, what have
Right.
you learned and what skills have you learned? Because you said, oh, I've been panic free since 21. That's a huge accomplishment.
Yeah.
But what did you learn to be able to manage that, even if you might feel symptoms popping up?
I guess at that point when it stopped, that is when I really kind of delved into my passions for music. I wasn't trying to I was comfortable in my own skin, if that makes sense. And at that point, just kind of coming to that decision. When I was in the studio, I was way more comfortable there than when I was trying to study to get into accounting school, if you will. So,
That's so
I,
different too. I
yeah,
just imagine you sitting there crunching numbers versus like just feeling consistent with your values and your passion.
right. Just being true to who you are. I felt like when I was trying to adapt, it felt like even though during the day I felt okay, it was almost like my mind was telling me something different through those experiences. And I just had to kind of pay attention to that to understand what was wrong there and how to fix that moving forward. So, and I've had a bunch of therapy as well too, kind of in my adult years, which is always helpful. And I always encourage others to pursue therapy. You don't necessarily need to have some mental health illness or anything like that. It's just always great to have someone to get things off your chest to. And and that can be harder. And I'm sure you can relate as you get older, it's harder to even make friends. So having someone that you can be that vulnerable and open with is crucial.
Absolutely. I just said this today in another call is that I'm a firm believer that a great therapist has a great therapist. So,
Right.
I think it's really important to, plug therapy as well if people would like to go that route, because you're right, it does give you a different perspective and they're not necessarily emotionally tied or embedded in your family dynamics or your friendships. So I'm glad to hear that that was helpful. So
Yeah.
what could you encourage other parents to look out for when they're talking with their kids about careers or even like schooling? Because that seems to be one of those generational points of conflict that a lot of my clients, as well as the younger generation, is bringing up.
Yeah. I kind of always go back to this thing that Kobe has said in the past, which is if you're lucky, you find your passion, and even luckier if you find your passion earlier at a young age, right? So, and I realized that with a lot of Asian parenting, you're not really encouraged to try a lot of things. It's about like very focusing on one thing to be great at, especially when it comes to your academics. And I encourage as parents to let their children try a lot of different things from a young age. Eventually, one of those things becomes a like, or maybe a few of those things, and out of those few likes, if you consistently do those things, you'll figure out one of them that really becomes a love eventually later with age. So being able to experiment just outside of what we're normally taught to do, eventually you'll come across a passion. I don't think sometimes passion can be a destiny thing. I have some sort of delusion that was my case sometimes you need it to kind of get to the other side of where you're trying to accomplish with your goals. But I don't think it's much of a science to it. I think people need to be able to experiment with and try different activities and different extracurriculars from a young age, and eventually follow along those things until one of those becomes something that you absolutely love to do. And I think that was with me. I tried a bunch of things, whether it's breakdancing. I was terrible at breakdancing, but basketball. I got cut on the first day of tryouts in high school. I was like, oh, this might not be for me. But with music, I realized, wow, this thing stuck. And once I discovered producing, everything just clicked for me. I knew it was it. And and I feel like a lot of people try to choose career paths on what's realistic, and really, what's that wise saying? Those who believe they can, and those who believe they can't as well. So they're both correct. And so when you kind of think about what's realistic, you always are limiting your own ceiling in its own way. And those with belief take different actions than those that don't have any belief. So try to believe in yourself, even if you don't have the skill set. I was a terrible producer when I was younger. My friends used to tell me my beats were horrible when I was younger, when I was in my early 20s, and so that decision wasn't made based off, oh, I think I'm good at this. It was more based on, I love doing this, and if I keep spending enough time doing it, eventually I'll get better with these baby steps. Walking up a stairwell, you don't want to be the person that jumps up 4 steps. You're going to miss the journey along the way.
And you're
So
not ready. And that's when
yeah.
people burn out and the expectations get too high.
That's right. And that 0 to 100 stuff is not real, right? So a lot of people, especially I notice in my business, they get it very early and they don't know how to sustain it. And a lot of that, let's take an example for a recording artist. They might catch a hit at 18, but maybe they've only developed one style to their music. So there's not enough evolution to be able to show your listeners over time to sustain that. And eventually people will get tired of that singular style that you're kind of showing your audience. So um, being ready and just enjoying the journey along the way, and understanding that those experiences will give you that tough exterior you need to really get there. And, God will tell me when the timing is right. And so I really feel like people should just take things slow. Don't be anxious about the journey, and just really take those baby steps and really learn from those experiences. There's no failures in life. It's just, if you're really aiming high enough to succeed at something that seems impossible, failure is kind of a prerequisite at the end of the day. Um, a lot of people learn a lot more from their failures than they do from succeeding. And I truly believe that.
Yeah, and also one of the things that parents really worry about is our ability to take care of ourselves
Right.
financially and being able to buy groceries. How is that aspect of the industry? I know that it's
Yeah.
kind of hard because it's like case by case, but
Yeah.
just to give a sense of what that looks like throughout your career in terms of starting being unpaid to now, how do you feel
Yeah.
financially?
Right. So, my wife and I are in a pretty comfortable financial situation. So, I'll talk about that financial journey. And just to give people context, I feel like people think if someone becomes an actor in the entertainment industry or an artist or a producer in the music industry, that they're just kind of like this starving artist living on the street, taking out banana peels from the trash can or something like that. But it's there's nothing wrong with holding a job down while until you get there. If it's your dream, it's your responsibility to finance it. And chasing your dreams is not free,
Mm,
by the way, for a lot of people that are listening out there. Like, just to give you an example, for me as a producer, sometimes I have to pay for the studio time for the artist to get in there to record or the equipment and things like that, or going to school, right? Taking that loan out and things of that nature. So chasing your dreams is extremely expensive, and a lot of times your parents are going to want you to learn the hard way, and you're going to have to finance those things on your own. So in the beginning, when I was an engineer and I worked at that Alicia Keys' studio, I was getting paid peanuts pretty much. Like I was working on uh, the self-titled Beyonce album when I first got my engineering opportunity there, which was nominated for Album of the Year at the Grammys, right? But I was getting paid $12 an hour at that time. Like I was a new 23, 24 year old, so I was barely making enough to kind of survive at that time. And I'll tell you one thing. So my parents at that time, they're like, okay, Jonathan, you've been giving it a few years, and I don't think you're financially stable yet. So they were like, we're gonna have to kick you out of the basement, or you got to go find something that's going to help you sustain yourself, right?
mhm.
Because we're worried about what would happen as you get older. So um, I had to leave home and do an MBA program at that time, and I hated it because I was like, man, I just came off of doing the Beyonce album. I just need a little bit more time. But in hindsight, I'm like, wow, that was the best thing I ever did. So I did an MBA program for 2 years. I moved into a data analytics career that was kind of more on the strategy side and an exec side. And then I built a career off of that from 2016 up until just recently. And I'm full time music now, but through those 7 to 8 years, it was completely necessary to be able to have my own place, not stress out my parents by living at home, paying for the studio time, paying for artists to have their music mixed and mastered professionally by someone else, um, and paying all those costs that I couldn't have if I had just stayed music full time since my earlier years. So it ended up being the best thing for me. And it's kind of a weird combination to have an MBA and be like a music producer, but it worked for me in that way.
I don't think it is though. I wish my PhD program had an MBA as well because when you get out, and this is what I tell my oldest, she's going to take finance this coming year, that you can make all the money in the world, but if you can't manage it, like
Yeah,
it's not going to work. And so
right.
I think at a baseline, people need to know basic finances and money management, credit management, and stuff like that. So I think you just have a really like unique mix of experiences that you can bring to the table, and you know how to manage your finances, which is part of life, and not a lot of people get that.
Yeah. So there's definitely needs to be a balance
Mhm.
as far as, right, you're sustaining yourself, chasing your dreams, and not having anyone else be responsible for how you get there. And I feel like that teaches a lot about life for sure, right? Because
Mhm.
if you're gonna go for something that seems far-fetched, like having an acting career, a writing career, a producing career, you really need to have your own accountability for moving that thing forward, and you learn a lot more if you hold it on your own back than relying on others.
Well, super producer Bandit, where can people find out about your music and the albums you've worked on and all that good promo stuff.
Sure. I'm constantly posting everything, all my music placements on my Instagram, so people can follow me at Super Producer Bandit, just like how it sounds. And they can even contact me and message me and DM me, ask me any questions about my journey there, or talk about music. I reply to everyone. Usually that hits me up. So don't be a stranger, whoever's listening out there.
That's so wonderful. Thank you so much for spending this Friday with me. And I know
Sure.
that your star is going to continue to rise.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you for listening. We would love for you to subscribe to the podcast and join our community on all our socials at colorsuccesspodcast.com. Looking forward to you checking out my memoir, Cancel the Filter, Realities of a Psychologist, Podcaster, and Working Mother of Color on Amazon and wherever books are sold. I'd love to hear your Cancel the Filter moments.